This is Blowing Hot and Cold. It's the world's first live weather video chat. And I know the main focus this evening is finding out if our weatherman, Brian Gaze, is going to have to be the world's first weatherman doing 10 press-ups on air for getting his forecast wrong. Now that really would be quite an achievement if we managed to pull that one off. We want to hear your views on this show. This show, to be honest, is a bit like a BBC Radio 5 Live football phone-in, but it's not about Harry Kane or Jose Mourinho. It's about the weather. Of course, there's no football to talk about, is there, actually, anywhere at the moment? And obviously, weather's actually better than football, in my view, because it's free to watch. There's no bad language. And of course, even if you're completely useless at sport, you can still take part and get involved.
You can probably bet on it too.
Yes.
Probably can. And there's something else football and weather have both got in common, and that's that we can use yellow cards, so that if either of us lapse into mumbo jumbo weather talk, this is what you get.
Right. Okay. So I've got mine ready as well, Brian. I've even got a whistle this evening, so I'm going to not be afraid to use that. If either of us goes off topic, we're going to be stopped in our tracks by the other one, and we're going to get a yellow card and get back on track. We don't have any red cards yet. So Brian, over to you.
Okay, so are we going to go through the agenda at this point?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon. We seem to have forgotten to introduce ourselves. Sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
We've got on here one of the UK's top commercial forecasters. That's Brian Gaze, and Britain's top weather journalist. That's me. My name's Alistair Grant. In this episode, we're going to be finding out why a hot and dry April means that we risk a bad summer in Britain. We're going to be hearing about the silver lining of coronavirus, which is the lack of pollution in our air at the moment. But I am quite sure the main reason people are on here is because they are hoping that Brian messed up his forecast a couple of weeks ago, and he has to do his 10 press-ups on air now for getting his forecast wrong.
Well, that's maybe what you hope. So what we're going to do is check like when we were back in school and give our homework to another kid in the class and get it marked. So we'll see who's going to be doing press-ups or star jumps tonight.
Oh, I see. Right. So, Brian, what did you tell us then? Let's see what you're saying. I'm not sure. I think we will have. I'm hoping we have these press-ups from you. What did you tell us, Brian, on April the 16th, 2 weeks ago, about the UK weather?
What I said was that we could expect temperatures of around 22 or 23 Celsius. And towards the end of the month, you know, during the last few days, things would turn wetter and cooler.
Yeah, but we actually got to 24 degrees, 24.3, didn't we, Brian? So you're actually 1 degree out. Does that count as being wrong?
Well, I think it's pretty damn good going to only be 1 degree out. And obviously you're a journalist, not a forecaster, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there.
Right, it's talking nasty already, guys. Don't believe it. Okay, Brian. So fair enough. No press-ups for you this week, but you know, because you have, to be fair, got the forecast pretty spot on. 1 degree out is pretty good. So you can have that one.
Thank you very much. So I think it's now my turn to make sure that you do keep your promise and do your 10 star jumps, because if your story was wrong, saying that April was going to be the hottest for 361 years, and I think it was wrong, you did promise to do those star jumps live tonight.
Yeah,
I think you were close with the article, but you didn't get it right. That's my view.
Well, it is true that I was 0.7 or 0.8 degrees off. Sorry, not I wasn't off. The Central England temperature, I should say, was 0.8 degrees off being the hottest for the past 361 years. It's going to be one of the top 2 or 3, Brian. Isn't that close enough?
Well, no, it's not. It's close, but, you know, no cigar and all that. So I think you should get on with it.
You get on with my star jump?
Stop protesting and get on with the star jumps.
I've got a reputation, Brian. Please.
Well,
don't do this to me.
I think you should stop moaning and do these star jumps now.
Right. Okay. All right. I'm a good sport, so I'm gonna stick to the routine. So I'll spin this around here so you can see me. Okay. And I'm gonna do these star jumps. No journalist has ever been humiliated like this before, but I'm gonna go and do it. Okay. So I hope you're counting. Here we go. Ready?
Off we go.
2, 3, 4, 5.
5? That's more like 1 or 2 you've done. I turned away for a second and suddenly you were on 5.
Well, I thought you were good at maths, weren't you?
I didn't say that.
Okay, 2, 3.
And it doesn't look like you're jumping. It looks like you're standing on the spot waving your arms around.
Oh God, I'm going to show you my feet. This is ridiculous. Right, I'll show you my feet as well. Oh, my legs, so you can see my head a bit. Hang on a second. There we go. Right, here we go.
Okay, that's better. We'll let you off now.
Look, legs out, you see?
Yeah.
This is embarrassing. 7.
I'm not counting now.
9, 10.
Okay. If you say that's 10, this time we'll give you the benefit again.
That's I should have remembered that just like newsreaders don't always wear, no one knows what they wear under the desk. It's the same for me in my shorts. Might have been caught out a little bit there. Pardon me, man.
Very good.
Not used to this exercise in the lockdown.
Out of breath, it seems.
Okay, so for our participants, if you'd like to message about anything for us to talk about, which is not in our topics we've got for this evening, please just send us a message on the chat at the bottom middle of the screen there. So if you want to talk about something that's not the hot April or maybe the bad summer or the air pollution, anything else, whack it in there now, and we'll go and discuss those subject areas. You don't have to have a precise question now, just a subject area. And like you might want to talk about, for example, something in winter or something like, the impact of people not flying. Are people going to, stop their love for traveling or something? We should try and keep it reasonably weather related. Or you guys might get a yellow card as well. So our first subject for tonight is the hot, dry April. So it has been a pretty belting month in the UK. We've had 23, 24, 25 degrees on numerous days. And Brian, have you got a tan yet?
I certainly have. It's been absolutely fantastic this month. Apart from the last few days, of course, when we've had a lot of rain. So already my tan is starting to fade a little bit, but I'm pretty pleased with my forecast for April as a whole. I hope you remember it.
I never remember the good ones. Well, I think, Brian, if we have a hot April, a bad summer follows. So I'm planning to write a story about that this weekend, meaning that our summer's more likely to be a bad summer because we had such a good April. What do you think?
Well, it's always risky basing the forecast for the summer on 1 month before in the spring, but has to be said, history shows the 2 hottest Aprils on record were both followed by poor summers. Those were in summer 2011. That was a cool summer with above average rainfall, and 2007 was also a very wet summer. I think it was the wettest summer on record, and the maximum temperature struggled just to reach 30 Celsius. And even the 3rd hottest April in the UK, which was in 2014, was also followed by a very mediocre summer. So history's not promising.
What are the forecast computer models saying, Brian, for the coming months?
Well, the forecasting models, the seasonal forecasting models are more promising, with most of them showing warmer conditions and quite a number of them showing dry conditions as well. So the alarm bells will be ringing now because of the historical evidence suggesting something different to what these computer models are pointing towards. And obviously the weather has a way of evening things out over a period of time. So that's something else to be aware of.
And we've also obviously had a couple of belting summers, haven't we? We got the 38.7 Celsius hottest day on record last year, and the year before was the hottest summer on record.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. We've had, getting month after month of above average temperatures and throughout the year. And as you say, recent summers have been very warm. So it would really put the cat among the pigeons if we do get a wet summer this year. And if it's a cool one, that really would be quite embarrassing, because cool summers have become as rare as hen's teeth in recent years. And as I say, the computer models do not support that at all.
Right. Okay, let's get some views then on what people think about this. Bryce, I'm going to unmute you now. What do you think of what Brian has been and I've been saying there about the warm April and the risk of the colder and wetter summer? And what questions would you have about that?
So obviously they contradict, don't they? The evidence we've got for, for the summer based on April and based on the computer models. So would you say, like, how much trust would you place in the computer models? Because obviously the seasonal ones don't have a good skill level. Do they actually?
Brian, I'll let you answer that one first.
Bryce, as you say, they don't have a good skill level in our part of the world. So Northwest Europe, particularly bad because we're influenced by all these different air masses. Having said that, temperatures above average. It's very unusual at the moment to get cooler than average months. So you would add more stock to what they're saying because of that. Rainfall is always a tricky one to gauge, as you may well know. So it's a very tricky call at the moment.
Obviously, over the autumn and winter period, the models were consistently talking about this very mild winter with more westerly winds, and that is what materialised. But forecasters, is it fair to say, Brian, were very sceptical of those models and were basically all caught out by winter being, not necessarily caught out, but surprised by winter being so mild?
Well, I think I actually called a mild winter, if I remember correctly. So
I told you I don't remember the good ones.
That's right. A lot of forecasting agencies, I think, were caught out by just how mild the winter turned out to be. And as you say, as we're saying, seasonal forecast models for the UK are pretty poor. They really are. They have improved a little bit over the last decade or so, but as Bryce just pointed out, the skill level of them, their accuracy isn't great.
Okay, I've muted you, Bryce. Peter, we'll come over to you now to see what, Peter, you're unmuted now. What do you think, Peter, about this hot April and the potential for it to be followed by the disappointing summers as we've had in those three recent years, 07, 2011 and 2014?
Well, I had two questions really, one for each of you. Firstly, I'm slightly bemused.
Could you talk up a bit, Peter, because it's a bit hard to hear you, please?
Sorry, I'm slightly bemused by the fact that you talk about computer modeling and computer models saying something that appears to fly in the face of experience. But does the computer model not take into account, the previous experience? That's one of the questions. And
okay, so let's do that one first, shall we? Brian?
So the way the seasonal computer models work is they take in huge amounts of data, for example, sea surface temperatures around the globe, atmospheric pressure, temperatures when they're initiated, and then they just resolve mathematical equations to produce a forecasts going out weeks or even months ahead, seasons ahead nowadays. And what happens is these models are run over and over and over again, and you look for the most common solution, which they suggest. And at the moment, the most common solution is seemingly a warmer than average one. Rainfall's more tricky to gauge. Now, to answer your question, do they take into account historic weather patterns? I don't believe they do. No.
And it might be an issue, obviously, Brian, because those ones you've discussed are the real outliers. If we've got records that go back to the 1860s approximately now, we're discussing the three hottest ones there. So they're obviously going to be the ones that maybe are the exception to the rule. Yeah.
Could I add something else in there, just quickly? I believe in the late 1970s, so we're going back, 40 years now, the way some of the long-range forecasting models worked was by pattern matching. So they would actually look at historical weather patterns and try to use those as a basis for predicting what was likely to happen. I believe they called it upper atmospheric pattern matching, but those models didn't work at all well, which is why they were dropped.
Maybe it'll be time to revisit that if this cool summer comes off and my story this time is correct. We'll see if maybe the large computer models, which the world's major meteorological agencies use, if they decide maybe it's time to go back to the 70s and check some of this old school weather techniques. Peter, what was your second question, please?
The question was for you, really, and it was how the hell are you going to sell any headlines if all you can say is we're going to have a sort of miserable, mediocre, non-eventful?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Rather than what a scorcher, or we're going to be flooded out.
Yeah, well, papers like extremes. So for me, trying to make a living, which is becoming increasingly challenging during coronavirus as newspapers' budgets plummet rapidly due to their advertising completely evaporating in the case of lots of newspapers. Papers want extremes, so they want either cold and wet, or they want hot and dry. That's what they want in a story. So if it was going to be average, you know, pretty average, but average rainfall, no particularly hot days, that's hard to sell. So it's actually easier to sell a cool and wet summer than it is. And we'll find out in a few days' time how easy or hard it was to sell that story when I come to do so. I'll just pop you back on mute there, Peter. Thanks a lot for your question. Now, I think it's time for us to have our weekly vote. We like to take a vote. And we just want to ask if you think summer is going to be wetter or cooler than average, or if you think it's going to be a warmer than average summer. Don't worry about drier. So basically, is summer going to be wetter or cooler than normal, which would be classed as being a bad summer in the perception of most people in the UK, or will summer be a warmer than average summer? So let's have the vote first for summer being wetter or cooler than average. Stick your hand up if you're voting for that. I'm in a minority of one here, it seems. So you see, no offense to the present company, but while the forecast can be wrong, history is fact. And those three very warm Aprils, all followed by disappointing summers, are the reason I'm voting for a wetter or cooler summer. So who's voting for summer to be hotter than average in that case?
I'll back a challenge at this stage and say if this summer turns out to be cooler than average, you can put me on for another 10 press-ups.
Do you have any hats available for eating?
I do, yeah. I think I've got a Santa hat somewhere.
How about if summer's is wetter than average, Brian?
Oh, I'm not. You're not going to catch me out with that one.
Okay.
I'm happy. I'm pretty happy to. I've got a high level of confidence in it being warmer than average, but wetter is a very difficult question.
Okay, so let's do a virtual handshake, Brian, for if we're still in business in September.
Yeah, we shouldn't really be doing handshakes. It's setting a bad example, even if it's a virtual one. We should be nodding our head, shouldn't we, or something, to avoid
head nod. Yeah. So if we're still in business in September, let's see who does the 10 press-ups for that. You're going cooler than average summer. Sorry, you're going hotter than average summer. I'm going cooler than average summer.
Yeah.
So let's see. Now I want to show you guys a really interesting map here, or two maps in fact, which shows the impact of coronavirus on the pollution which is in our skies. So it's this one here. So can you guys see that okay? Is that on the screen okay, Brian, for you?
I can't see it.
Give me a nod if you can see that, Peter and Bryce.
Now I can.
Yeah, okay, cool. If I make that a bit bigger, at the top of the screen here, that is the air pollution over Europe in January this year. Levels which are red indicate high levels of pollution. Levels which are dark orange indicate medium, dark orange and yellow indicate medium pollution. Blue indicates low pollution. So you can see there that northern Italy, which has a lot of its industry in the parts which are very badly affected by coronavirus, are red, and then over the Netherlands and Germany, it's yellowy orange, and over the southeast of the UK. Also check out Madrid. Let's now scroll down to March. I'll try and do this so you can get both on the screen. Look at that. Italy's red has gone back to mainly yellow. The orangey patch over Germany has gone to blue and yellow. All this stuff in Eastern Europe's gone. And in the UK, looks like we have got some pollution there in the Manchester to Leeds area. But the area around London, there's definitely less white shading in there. So that shows you the impact coronavirus has had on the pollution, which is reduced. So, Brian, what do you think about the this? And I believe you've been reading a study into it.
Yeah, I think I have, and I think there are three key points really here. The first is there's been a steep reduction in traffic across most of Europe, across much of the world, as we know, which is a big factor. Also, coal-fired power stations have been shut down in a number of countries, and those are the two.
So that's the main reason. Then the lack of traffic.
Yeah.
The coal power stations. How about flights? Presumably that's helped a bit. Less
flights will have an impact. I'm not. I mean, coal-fired power stations and traffic's mainly for nitrogen dioxide. Flights will have a slightly different impact, but yes, they will help to reduce pollution at upper levels in the atmosphere as well, at higher levels in the atmosphere.
So less people being ill then due to air pollution?
Yeah, I mean, indeed. I believe that over 1,700 deaths in the UK have been avoided in the past month or so due to the lower pollution. And I think about 120,000 fewer days off work have been taken as a result of the cleaner air as well. So
how much has the pollution actually fallen by then? I mean, we've seen that chart, but what about figures for...
So nitrogen dioxide, which is the main one, which results from traffic and fossil fuel power stations, has fallen by 36%, and toxic particles have fallen by 9% on average in British cities, and that's based on analysis by the Centre for Research on Energy and Clean Air. So big difference, big changes.
That is a big change, isn't it? So to arrive at this 1,700 deaths, the study must have based that on, presumably they haven't been reading about, I'd be surprised if they've been able to go through death certificates or hospital admission causes of reasons for death. So I think they'll have based that on the percentage reduction in pollution and also the average number of deaths in the UK per year due to air pollution. Now, believe it or not, the number of people that die due to air pollution in the UK is about 15 times higher than the number of people that die in road traffic accidents. This is
so do we know how many people that is roughly?
That's 29,000 people based on Department of Health backed research. However, there was another study last month that showed the figures actually about double that, 63,000 deaths per year in 2015. There's going to be an increasingly awkward debate about this, which is a debate that has to happen in society about how we go forwards after coronavirus, and some of the good things that are happening, for example, community, less pollution, that we can take forwards. So that's going to be a debate. I mean, for example, I saw that Milan, I like cycling, so Milan is introducing more cycling lanes. Brian,
very good. It's a fabulous city, Milan. I love it. But really, it's not relevant to our discussion here at the moment, and you're going off at a tangent, I think, now. So I'm going to award you the first yellow card of the night. First,
though, you make me do about 20 star jumps, and now I get a yellow card for saying I like cycling. God.
Oh, it's a tough life being a journalist.
At least no one's swearing at me this evening. Yes.
No, I'll refrain. Don't worry about that.
Okay, let's ask what you guys think about this. So, Bryce, I'm amusing you. What's your view about that? Those figures that Brian's given for the deaths which are being avoided by the lower air pollution due to coronavirus, and also, how you feel about the impact that lack of pollution is having, for example, on our green spaces and people wanting to be outside.
Well, I guess that's a silver lining in all of this, in all of this kind of bad news, because even though they are a significant amount of people, I think obviously it's still I'm definitely a minority compared to the amount of people affected by the coronavirus. So it is a bit unfortunate the circumstances, but I guess it's good at least if there is a silver lining in a way, if you know what I mean.
Yes, if we can rebuild our societies and our transport networks in a greener way, that will obviously be good. With more, I'm trying to do an impression of the C word without Brian getting his second yellow card out.
Yeah, no, I'm watching. I'm keeping a close tab on you. But...
Peter, you're unmuted. What's your view about those figures showing the reduction in air pollution?
Well, again, there are two things that occur to me really. The first is, as Bryce says, it's definitely a silver lining, I think, but possibly there's a longer term silver lining that if the opportunity can be taken to persuade more people to do more cycling in the long term, i.e. permanently, we'll save more lives into the future. So I'm not quite sure where you sort of draw the line and count numbers up until.
Brian, I noticed that Peter said the C word there, and he didn't seem to get your yellow card out. Are there different rules for participants and for me?
Oh, of course, Ryan.
What's your other point, Peter?
I was going to redeem myself from the yellow card by going on to say that we're talking about pollution, but Brian, do you think the reduction in pollution, and presumably, you've talked about nitrous oxide, and presumably you mean particulates as well, but what about CO2? And between them, are they going to have any significant effect on our weather, at least in the short term, that we might notice?
So in terms of CO2 emissions, I think it's going to be negligible, the difference, unless there are behavioural changes which take place after the coronavirus has been and gone. But to answer the second point there, will there be any impacts on the weather in the short term? I think there already are some impacts, because fewer particulates in the atmosphere means that the sunlight's coming through stronger, and it's actually helping to raise temperatures fractionally. So it could actually help the warming trend even in the short term.
Oh,
but in the long term, I don't see much change. I don't see much from this.
That sounds good, Brian, for your forecast of a hot summer then, but not so good for my story about a cool summer.
Yeah, I think it's quite a fractional change in temperature, and it will be around the globe overall. So locally, what's going to be far more important is the wind direction and the pressure patterns. So if you get lucky, you may still come out trumps.
Okay, so going forwards, Brian, we're obviously just wrapping up this belting April. Now, I know you've got some stuff to tell us about May. Now, am I right that you've very, very sportingly agreed to roll over your 10 press-up challenge, so that if your next forecast is wrong after this one wasn't, you will do 10 press-ups in our next episode, which is on May the 14th, 2 weeks tonight?
I don't remember saying that.
Oh, well, I wrote
Did I say that?
I wrote it in the script, so we're going to have to keep it in now.
Okay, well, if it's in black and white, you can show me afterwards, and I won't dispute it in that case.
Okay, so let's see how it's looking going forwards, Brian. We've got, obviously, we basically had this 6-week drought, and then we've got rain, obviously, in the past few days. How does it look going forwards? Will this rain stop at some point?
Well, it's a tricky call at the moment. So what I'm going to do is share my screen out and bring up a horrible-looking chart. Can everybody see it? I'm not sure how much delay there is.
Well, I'm sorry, Brian. That looks like a load of. I have had dinner, but it looks like a load of spaghetti.
A spaghetti chart.
That's definitely too technical, and that's a yellow card from me.
Oh my word, I've not even started talking about this yet, and you're calling it a yellow card.
Look at it. You have to have a master's to understand, probably and a PhD, and I haven't got either to understand.
Well, I've got a master's and I can understand it. I don't have a PhD, you know, goodness. But anyway, should I try and explain it?
What's at the bottom to start with?
Across the bottom is the timeline. So it starts. This one starts from tomorrow, basically, or tonight, midnight tonight, and it goes through to the 15th of May, the 16th of May, actually. If you can see, I don't know whether you can read the text. Yeah. So the 1st of May, 3rd, 5th. It's in two.
Yeah, if you zoom in a fraction, we can see it.
I'll try and zoom in a little more in that case. It's difficult to. Is that better?
That's better, yeah. We can see it goes from the 1st of May along to the 15th, so the next 16 days or so. And what about this hump-shaped line in the middle? It looks like the curve is going to be flattened in whatever that is, to use Boris's expression, later on in May.
Yeah, it is. The curve has been flattened. Sometimes we see big spikes on this upper half of the chart. And what these lines show are the forecast temperatures at about 5,500 feet or 1,500 meters above sea level, and each line represents a forecast from one of the runs in the GEFS computer model.
Why are you showing us temperatures, Brian, so high in the air, and why have you got lots of different lines on that chart? Why isn't there just one line?
So the reason why it's so high in the air is because it doesn't fluctuate during the day or the night. It's constant, so it makes it a lot easier to look at, and it provides a good guidance to the air mass which is overhead, warm or cold, and that gives a good indication of the conditions we can expect down at the ground level. And why there's so many lines? Well, there are 20 runs or perturbations, as they called. That's why it's P1, P2, perturbation 1, perturbation 2. Those are just different runs within the computer model itself.
You know, Brian, you are bordering on me going to my son's box of cards and cutting up a red one.
I thought that might be the case.
I've never ever heard what was it? Perturbation.
Perturbation. P-E-R-T-U-B-A-T-I-O-N. I think I might have missed a letter out there, but some perturbation.
I'm a journalist for respectable newspapers, and I've never heard that word.
You learn something every day. So that's you can maybe use that word as a headline grabber or something.
If I use it as a headline, there won't be any space. It would take up the whole space, and there'll be nothing else to say, like about sun or cold or anything else.
But it would have your unique stamp on.
It needs to be a bulge or a plume or a blast to be what
So a blast. There's no blast really. There's not much sign of a plume, although possibly just around this period, about the 6th of May, we've got a couple of the runs within this model showing much warmer air, just crossing over southern England for a short time. Sorry, northwestern England. This one's actually for Liverpool. It's a very similar picture further south at the moment.
Okay, Brian, I know that next Friday is the VE Day bank holiday, with lots of people having celebrations at home, and if they have an outdoor space in their gardens or in their front yard. I see. How's it look around the 8th of May? I see there's a bit of rain showing up down the bottom. That's the rain, isn't it, there?
Yeah, as you say, the lines on the lower part of the chart are rain forecasts from each of the computer model runs. So around that period between the sort of 5th of May and the 10th of May or 11th of May, it does look as though it could be wetter again. So that's not great news for VE Day. Okay,
and how about looking further forward, Brian, from mid-May onwards? Will it feel like summer or not?
Yeah, well, this chart, as we said, only goes out to about 16th of May. So if I can just flip across to a different one, which is from generated by a different computer model, and it shows temperature anomalies. So will temperatures for a given week be above average or below average?
Can you zoom in a bit on that, please, Brian?
Yeah, I'll try. Zoom in further. We can see it's looking across Europe, and the UK is here on the left-hand side. Can you all see that? Hopefully,
we can see that, and I see there's some blue over the UK. Presumably, that's not good news.
That's not good news. So that is indicating the likelihood of below average temperatures between the 11th of May and the 17th of May. Right. With the biggest anomaly in the northwest of the UK.
Oh dear. And going forward, I mean, how about a bit later in May? What sort of maximum temperatures will we be seeing?
So if we just jump a week ahead, we can see we've lost that cool anomaly. If anything, it's indicating above average temperatures in eastern Britain, well, eastern England, really. So that's going between the 18th and the 24th of May. So by then, we'd be looking at temperatures into the low to mid 20s Celsius in southern England. Fingers crossed that warming trend would continue into the last week of May. So I would hope that we could see 27, 28 Celsius in the last week, in the second half of May, but in particular, it would be most likely in the last week of the month.
Okay, Scotland does very well, doesn't it, in May, Brian?
Yes.
And in fact, has some of its warmest temps for the year in late May. Sometimes might they be up comparable with England's top temperatures in Scotland?
Yeah, I'd say perhaps comparable, but a degree or two lower. So 25, 26 Celsius would be my take on it with the current data.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing your screen, Brian. Let's get some views about this now. Bryce, how about kicking off with Peter this time? Peter, I've unmuted you. What do you think about Brian's forecast there going forwards? Looking at the risk of some rain for the VE Day celebrations, and then slightly cooler mid-May, but warming up to a hotter end to May.
Well, what I thought was interesting on that first graph, sorry, I'll get a bit closer. What I thought was interesting on the first graph was that the slightly higher temperatures around VE Day seem to more or less coincide with the predicted higher rainfall. So it's not only going to be wet, but it's going to be warm that day. Is that right?
Do you want me? Yeah, I can address that point. It's good that you've picked up on it, because I can actually look through the synoptics, the pressure patterns which each of those runs is showing. I'm not going to do it now, but I can tell you you're spot on in your assessment there, because what most of the runs are showing is an area of low pressure pushing up from the southwest, and ahead of that it's got some very warm but moist air, and hence that's why we're getting these higher temperatures coinciding with the wet weather. Now remember, those higher temperatures are 5,500 feet above our heads approximately, so unfortunately if the rain comes along, we're likely to see temperatures at the ground level falling, so it wouldn't be particularly warm when the rain itself turns up. What I would expect is a warm day or two before the rain, or between the outbreaks of rain.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I'll just go on to Bryce if that's okay. Oh, sorry, Peter. I'll unmute you again. Yes, Peter.
Just a question for you, Alistair. Again, does synoptics deserve another yellow card?
I haven't heard of that one either. I did figure I can only give him one threat of a red before I have to get the red out, and my son's going to be irritated if I start cutting up his crafts for tomorrow.
I'll tell you what, can I withdraw that word and just say pressure patterns, high pressure and low pressure areas? Or is that not good enough?
Peter's okaying it, so that's okay.
He's okaying it. Thanks, Peter.
Bryce, what do you think about that forecast for the rest of spring? Obviously, the last month of spring we had a belting mid-spring. The last 6 weeks or so. What do you think about May?
I would say it looks like you had the ensemble chart up there just now, didn't you? And
now,
like
Bryce, you're gonna. Can you be the right? You're gonna be the first participant to get a yellow card. The first one, the ensemble. I've seen that playing at the Royal Albert Hall, didn't I? An ensemble of musicians.
Oh, sorry, I was just referring to the graph that Brian was sharing.
You have to say that spaghetti that Brian showed to start with. That's what you have to say.
Oh, okay, the spaghetti then. But I saw the rainfall. Did that look like it indicated like May showers? Because so far for most of April, we've not seen any April showers. Well, apart from the last week.
Yeah, you're right about April. It's been very untypical, hasn't it? As we were saying, and apart from the last few days, as you may know, as we tend to go through the spring into the summer, more rainfall comes from from showers. I won't use. There's another C word there which you may know, but I'm not going to use, and it's not rude either. But I'll get a red card. So in the summer months, more rain tends to come from showers rather than organised bands of rain, which we get in the winter months. Weather fronts coming in from the Atlantic. So I'm not entirely sure I would use the term May showers. Because, as I said, the charts are tending to show quite deep areas of low pressure, maybe a little bit unseasonal, pushing up from the southwest. But during that period, but in general terms, maybe through the rest of May, it would be applicable. Yeah.
Can I throw in there, Brian, if we've got Peter's analysis for this potential warm air just before VE Day, and we've got the wet weather that Bryce and you were talking about in May, might thunderstorms be about to wreck VE Day celebrations?
It's obviously a worry when you've got the mixture of warm, moist air during May, June, July. So during the summer months, it's an increasing worry. So it's definitely something to be aware of, and we need to keep an eye on it during the coming days. I wouldn't discount that just at the moment.
Okay. Now we've just got about 5 minutes left, I think, so just time for a few more questions. Bryce, you're unmuted at the moment. What other subjects would you like to ask to Brian or me, please?
So actually, I was just having a look at this earlier today, but there was an ozone hole earlier over the Arctic, and usually every year there's one over the Antarctic, but they said there was one over the Arctic, and they said that was to do with the very strong polar vortex which went on through most of winter, and and was unusually strong over the past winter. So I was just wondering, maybe why was it so strong over the past winter, the winter vortex, the polar vortex, sorry?
It certainly was tremendously strong, wasn't it? It was catapulting lots of low pressure systems across the UK, across the Atlantic to the UK, I beg your pardon, mainly by strengthening the jet stream. The jet stream is some winds that run at about 10 kilometers in the air. They run straight across from North America to Britain. And when they're very powerful, and they get up to 250 miles an hour when they're at the most powerful, two things happen. First of all, we get a lot more low pressure areas. And secondly, planes shoot across the Atlantic very fast, and they save fuel. So Brian, what do you think about why that vortex? I mean, it really was strong, wasn't it?
It was. Well, first of all, let me say I'm impressed with your explanation there. So maybe you want my job. That was good. That was good. And I think that's spot on. The question, it always comes down to cause and effect, doesn't it? What caused the jet stream to be strong this winter? Well, you would say it was a temperature differential between the Arctic and the mid-latitude areas, maybe 20 to 40 degrees north. So when you get this huge temperature differential, you get the strong jet stream forming, and the cold air gets bottled up because everything's going round and round and round very fast, and it's a very flat pattern. But and if you go onto some of the weather forums, you're going to find people who'll give in-depth explanations of why this occurs. But it's very difficult to pin it down to one thing, in my view. There's always a question, as I say, it always comes down to cause and effect. It's difficult to separate the two. Beyond that, I think there's a lot of speculation. You look at forcing mechanisms like sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, with El Nino, etc., etc. But it's very things like the QBO. But then again, what's driving that? So we know it's cyclical. But yeah, it's very difficult to split out all the separate components which go into it, and that's one of the reasons why seasonal forecasting is so difficult. If it was obvious that we were going to have a strong jet stream last winter, a record Arctic oscillation, then everybody would have got the forecast correct. It's not.
One of the crazy things about winter just gone was the incredibly people know that El Nino, which happens in the Pacific Ocean, which is nowhere near the UK, can actually have quite a big effect on the UK's climate. But also the Indian Ocean, or the Indian Nino as it's called, can also have a very big effect on the UK's climate. And incredibly, one of the reasons which Australia had its wildfires so badly during their summer, the Northern Hemisphere winter, was due to the Indian Ocean. I'm not going to yellow card myself because I'll be off, and that'll be the end of the show. But what it basically means is that near to Australia in the Indian Ocean, it's normally really hot, the Indian Ocean there. And this year, it was a lot colder than normal. What that means is that all that warmth couldn't take the moisture to Australia, so they had a drought. But in the Western Indian Ocean, near Africa and the Gulf, they actually had a very wet winter, and very wet in our winter, in their, that time of year for them, which is I think they're still in the Northern Hemisphere, aren't they? They're near the equator. They had lots of really bad floods. So we had the impact of the polar vortex on the one hand, and also on the other side of the world, a long way away, we had the Indian Ocean dipole causing this effect, which actually causes more storms and more low pressure as well in the UK, strengthening the jet stream across the Atlantic. And I really am verging on a red card. That would be so embarrassing. I don't want that to happen to me.
Yeah, I think. Oh, okay, I've withdrawn that. That's just a second sort of semi-warning.
Was that like a sort of stern talking to?
A stern talking to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Peter, thanks a lot, Bryce. Peter, I've unmuted you now. What else would you like to ask Brian or I about any subjects we haven't covered, please?
Well, really going on from what Brian's just said, but maybe this is a question that would take a whole session to answer. But it's not obvious to me, and I suspect most people, how it is that these sea currents like El Nino and the Indian Ocean dipole can have an effect on the weather.
Well, so just briefly on that, it's largely to do with the sea surface temperatures. If it's warmer, it has a different effect on the atmosphere, on the air above it, and that affects the circulation in the region, and that has a knock-on effect around the world. One of the correlations which the Met Office found about 20 years ago was sea surface temperatures in the North Atlantic in May, as it happens, having an impact on the likelihood of colder or warmer winters in the UK. Unfortunately, I believe they've stopped researching that because the correlation wasn't particularly strong. But it's really to do with sea surface temperatures having a big impact on the atmospheric conditions above that part of the world. And as I say, what happens in one part of the world has a knock-on effect to what happens elsewhere.
Yeah, I can just actually throw up a screen share for that, Brian, which is going, and Peter and Bryce, which is going to hopefully illustrate that point better. At the top here, we've got.
This is a good one. This is a good one.
This is the impact of El Nino, which happens over here in the Pacific Ocean. I'll just zoom in a little bit. Is that getting any bigger for you guys?
I can see it reasonably well on my screen, but I've got
okay,
the
cool.
monitor.
So we've got the Pacific over here having an effect on Western Europe, which is about 5,000 miles away over here. So when there's an El Nino, and what an El Nino is, just to spell it out, trying to spell it in a simple manner, because we're trying to make this weather video chat accessible to everyone, for all the people who are actually interested in weather, but actually have never done anything about it and might find it all a bit boring or a bit complicated. We're trying to make it accessible. El Nino, which means the child in Spanish, was named by Peruvian fishermen who noticed that around Christmas time, which is why they call it El Nino for Jesus Christ, the temperatures off the coast of Peru were warmer than average. This causes lots of impacts, not just in Peru, but across the globe, as you can see from this map. So it's warmer ocean temperatures here in the Pacific Ocean. And you can see when it builds up and it peaks around Christmas. So when it's building up there in autumn in the Western Europe, I know that blue blobs over Spain and France, but it's fair to say we have a bit of impact from that as well, with a wetter autumn. And if we scroll down now to temperature impacts, you can see that we also have a warmer temperature in autumn as well, which means warmer and wetter. It means more storms coming across the Atlantic. When it's hanging around to January or February, we can then get colder than normal up in Northern Europe, which will also have an impact on us because we're obviously very close to Norway, only 500 or 300 miles or something. So it does have an impact on us over there. So I'll take that screen share off. Did you have another question to ask Peter, please?
The only other thing I was going to say was we've talked a lot about temperature and rainfall, but we haven't said much about winds. And I wondered if Brian had any predictions for whether we're going to get strong winds and storms.
Brian, are you expecting, and Peter, are you referring to the summer period or the rest of spring or a bit further ahead?
I was thinking of the sort of, well, from now and through to, say, September.
Brian, are we expected to have any storms cropping up? We did obviously have the first ever named storm by the UK Met Office in June. I think it was last year or the year before, which was a real surprise. So I beg your pardon, it might have actually been named by the Irish version of the Met Office, Met Iran, because they also are in the same storm naming sort of forecaster gang that name the storms.
Yeah, they are, that's right. So during the summer months, which we're talking about, I guess, the areas of low pressure tend to weaken. They don't become as vigorous as they do in the winter months. So we don't generally get as strong winds. What can happen is it can become you can get squally conditions when thunderstorms develop. So that's a different scenario. And that's the main thing to look out for, I would have thought, in the next few months. So not your Atlantic gales like we'll start getting again in September, October, but the possibility of squally winds coming from localized thunderstorms.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
So to answer your question directly, I don't think strong winds are going to be a major issue in the summer months.
Some of those thunderstorms really pack a punch, don't they, Brian? Would you expect some localized flooding when they hit?
Yeah, that's right. I would do, with above average temperatures, which is what I'm expecting. There's more energy in the atmosphere, etc., and that increases the chances. There are other factors, but it increases the chances of thunderstorms developing.
Okay, now Peter, while you're unmuted, it's time for us to wrap up now. Now, just before we wrap up, I've got one question for you and one question for Bryce, and it's only a one-sentence answer needed, please. And I'd just like you to tell us, very simply in one sentence, what you thought about this video chat, and please no swear words. So, Peter, what do you think of it?
Witty and interesting.
I beg your pardon?
Witty and interesting.
And why is that?
And I didn't mean Chris Whitty.
Okay, well, thank you, Peter, for that nice comment. So I'll put you on mute. And Bryce, tell us what you think about this video chat in one sentence. Would you recommend it to anyone else?
Definitely, and it's very interesting and very insightful.
Can you give us a sentence and tell us if you've ever found any other, say in a sentence, have you ever found a weather video chat or watching a video about weather as fun as this one?
No.
Tell us it in a sentence, please.
Okay, definitely not, because you guys, Brian's a forecaster, you're a journalist, so it gives you a good viewpoints and you just get all the different opinions.
Thanks very much for your feedback there, Bryce. So it's time for us to wrap up now. So the next video chat is in 2 weeks' time. It's on Thursday, May the 14th at 8:30 p.m. It's easy to remember. We go outside, have a big clap. I was clapping for about 10 minutes for Captain Tom and everyone else today. And then you come inside 8:30 p.m. Thursday, May the 13th for our next edition of Blowing Hot and Cold.
Fantastic. So thanks for turning up, and as ever, please suggest subjects that you would like to be discussed at the next Blowing Hot and Cold. You can send them via the website or via Twitter or Facebook or email. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Yes, you can see the video from tonight going up on our Twitter, Facebook and YouTube feed. Thank you very much for taking part in Blowing Hot and Cold, the world's first live weather video chat. Obviously, handshakes and high fives, they're out at the moment. So I'm going to finish with a Namaste. So good night. Namaste.